Here's what Jimmy Kimmel won't tell you about mass shootings. Many are understandably upset by the Las Vegas shooting and are expressing their emotions and calling on the government to take action. According to Breitbart, one of the more emotional advocates for gun control in the wake of the 59 deaths was Jimmy Kimmel. Yet it's odd that a similar emotional reaction isn't given for the nearly 59 people who have died every month in Chicago so far this year. Monday's Jimmy Kimmel live show had an emotional Kimmel lamenting over the dead and dying following the Las Vegas shooting. Between the tears, he called on politicians to pass stricter gun control measures and criticized the Republicans who oppose gun control. One of his more notable statements while criticizing those politicians who opposed gun control restrictions was, "We have a major problem with gun violence in this country and I guess they don't care." While there's no questioning the sincerity of Kimmel's sorrow, the understandable frustration he has with those he believes are the source of the problem or the questions he raises on what could have been done to prevent this tragedy, there is an element of hypocrisy when Kimmel and others on the left only seem to care about gun violence after a major tragedy, especially when it can push their political agendas. According to the Chicago Tribune, this year alone has seen 527 deaths in Chicago, an average of a little over 58 deaths a month. Yet very little concern or media attention has been given to Chicago and the large number of deaths it has suffered every month of every year for decades. Perhaps the reason the left doesn't focus on the deaths in Chicago, as the article in Breitbart suggests, is because they are largely the result of illegally obtained firearms and that gun control measures in the city have actually increased the death toll. USA Today reports that Chicago has a huge problem with a seemingly endless flow of illegal weapons into the hands of criminals and gang members who drive most of the violence. These aren't legally obtained weapons, and they are not weapons that can be restricted by gun control laws. Many on the left like to point out that many of these weapons are obtained from states that have looser gun regulations, like Indiana, and are then transported to Chicago. The belief then goes that we need to extend gun control and regulation to these states as well to stop the violence. But there is a number of flaws with this line of thinking. First off, why are those states with looser gun regulations not experiencing more crime? If easy access to guns drives violent attacks, then shouldn't they be swamped with problems? Second of all, criminals will always find a way to obtain the weapons they need to commit violence. Even if all of the states in the U.S. united together and utterly banned the possession and manufacturing of firearms in the country, these criminals would smuggle them in from other countries or even have the means to manufacture their own, or just use an alternative weapon. 59 people who have died every month in Chicago. Is gun control the answer? The third and most glaring problem is that Chicago had already tried to implement stricter gun control and it simply made the violence worse, not better. Breitbart reports that when a handgun ban was implemented, meaning no one could own a handgun in Chicago, the number of deaths jumped by the hundreds. Criminals realized their victims were unarmed and more vulnerable and took advantage. The emotional outrage to the Las Vegas shootings is completely justified, and people wanting solutions to these violent acts is totally understandable. But we need appropriate solutions to the problems at hand. We need to approach the real root of the problem, be it cultural, mental illness, or whatever, and solve it on that level. Using high-profile events and raging emotions to push political change is not acceptable and is completely irresponsible. The solution to these problems lies in clear thoughts, cool emotions, and level heads. Once all the facts behind this terrible tragedy are obtained and we can approach the problem with a measure of civility and calm, then we can work to prevent further tragedy.